Monday Night Football is here, our last part of Week 11. It was a fun Sunday night game, but today we get a battle of Texas. It's probably going to be a little bit less fun. We got some obvious plays. Joe Mixon's going to look pretty good going against a hapless Dallas team. Of course, we're going to do what we always do here. We're going to look at the projections and the ownership via Stochastic. We're going to run an optimization, see the optimal lineups today via the solver. We're going to hop over, look at the sims. We're going to hand build lineup and sim that out as well. By the end of this video, you know 3 takeaways with unique lineups on this slate. Let's get into it. It was a good main slate for me yesterday. I only put one lineup into the Sunday Nighter and did not get the J.K. Dobbins part of that right. So that was still a fun game, though. I was surprised to see that one be as good after the really shitty first half. But Bengals still playing, I guess. We'll see. Let's get those guys eliminated is my goal. So we get Jamar Chase out of the mix for all the best ball teams. But a fun game, though. Much more fun than I would have thought based on looking at just the fact that it was Bengals Chargers on Sunday Night Football. This one, though, we'll see how it goes. But the obvious play up top here, looking at the projections, is Joe Mixon, a 21.1 projection for him, 11K salary, spot against Dallas, where, as I've mentioned a few times on here, Dallas' defense has quietly become one of the worst in the league. You combine that with the fact that they also just have no motivation to exist as a football team at this point. They're not playing for anything. Starting quarterback's gone, a highly paid wide receiver playing again, so that's the positive. But besides that, just really nothing for Dallas to play for at this point. And honestly, they'd be better off tanking, given the fact they actually have a first-round pick next year. But Dallas on the year, giving up a 0.07 EPA per dropback, 0.08 EPA per pass, stuffing the run at a league-low 14% rate, 82% catchable ball rates, also very high. They're bad versus motion plays, 0.23 EPA versus a motion pass, 0.06 EPA versus a motion run. Point is that they just can't defend anything. Like, literally, Houston has not been good this year, but they can get whatever they want here. The assumption, though, is that it comes down to Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon himself getting 5.4 red zone intended touches a game, 2.1 instead of the 10-yard line. This 21.1 projection to me, it's going to be chalky. It's going to be highly owned. There are going to be ways to get unique on the slate, but like on its face for the slate today, in a game where the Houston has a 24 implied total and Dallas is a 7-point dog at home, it's a Joe Mixon game. So Joe Mixon looks good. Best projected player by a pretty wide margin. That's basically that. Shouts to the chat. I had to get here early to say nothing. Pretty fun. What's up, brother? Thanks again for everything. Yes, it was a chaotic stream yesterday morning. The Mondays are much nicer because much more competition going on. People watch this stream on delay a lot. That's a positive for me because yesterday was like fucking idiot central. So shout out to all you guys who watch these videos. I appreciate everybody, but man, I can only handhold so much. But Joe Mixon, I'll handhold you guys and say, good play today. Might shock you here. CJ Stroud, 17.2 projection on him. Pretty low salary, 9,800. Is going on this one. Implied what that Lad McConkey is not good. I hope that was the implication. The third best receiver for the Chargers, though. That's pretty good. CJ Stroud, I don't care about Lad McConkey. Please don't talk about him in chat. CJ Stroud, $9,800 salary, looking like a pretty good one here. Pairing with Nico Collins, putting on captain if you want. If you want to try to get away from Joe Mixon and play a game where Texans score a lot of points with a pass-dominant approach, playing CJ Stroud at captain be pretty appealing at that price tag. And again, number 2 projected player, probably gets to a lot of lineups here. We'll see about our number 3 guy, though, Nico Collins. Nico Collins, 16.5 fantasy points, number 3 overall. Adam, I got to tell you, man, I don't care today. Sorry, just not in the mood. Nico Collins, 16.5 fantasy points, 10-4 salary on him. Nico Collins looking pretty good in the spot, returning here. Assumptions that he should be a full go. He basically seemed like he should have been able to play last week. But at this point, really, for Nico Collins, getting him back out there, soft matchup. The hope is that he does a lot of things here that maybe Joe Mixon doesn't. So in terms of scoring, if Mixon doesn't get there quite as much, probably because Nico Collins didn't get taken down inside the 5-yard line. Instead, he punched it in for a touchdown. So that's basically how it is. Dallas D is popping the Sims. They are one of the worst defenses in football right now, so I'd have a really hard time doing that. And Trey Lance for all the money, I had a hard time doing that as well. That was chaos, but still playing Dawson Knox today. Yeah, Dawson Knox, not active today, unfortunately. I can confirm that right now. CeeDee Lamb, a 14.1 projection is really low for him at a 10.8 salary. CeeDee Lamb at this point, a player that is not the same player he was last year, even when Dak Prescott was healthy. Now with Dak Prescott not being healthy, the target share is going to be there for him. The work's going to be there for him. You have guys like Jalen Brooks, Jalen Cropper out there behind CeeDee Lamb. Of course, Jalen. Why are they all named Jalen? Why did I just realized that every Cowboys backup receiver who's not CeeDee Lamb is named Jalen. But you have Jalen Tolbert, Jalen Cropper, Jalen Brooks. You have Kevontae Turpin still in there as well. Ryan Flournoy did not get any snaps last week, but there's really just nothing to take targets away from CeeDee Lamb at this point. You will have Jake Ferguson in there today. He was ill earlier in the week. Did seem like he might not play. Does seem like he'll play now. So that's your pivot point for CeeDee Lamb if you want to go to the pass game. But I think just trying to get CeeDee Lamb, pay the price tag, ignore the awful projection, I would say is a pretty good situation to be in. So for CeeDee Lamb, the spot, 10.8 salary. I think he is more playable than he should be at that salary, just because you have to have something from Dallas, and Rico Dowdle at his price tag probably gets a little bit overplayed. Rico Dowdle, your 5th highest projected player in the slate, though. $9K salary for him, 13.9 projection. Rico Dowdle's been getting the work. I think last week the snap share might have really flipped for him. Dowdle last week got to 31 snaps. Maybe not. Ezekiel Elliott still played 18. I know, 13. Where's Hunter Luepke at? Hunter Luepke played 16. So Rico's workload last week was still not far off from where it's been historically in terms of him getting kind of a fractional role. They did talk about him being the lead back after the fact. Dalvin Cook snaps. Yeah, he was back down to 0 last week. I think the assumption is that Rico Dowdle gets a lot of work today. I'm not sure that's actually called, so that's going to be likely to happen. So for Rico Dowdle in the spot, I think he's an okay play. I think it's a really fragile play because Dallas has to get in position for him to do something with it. And you also have to assume he's going to get the goal line work, which still in the year, 1.3 fantasy points, 1.3 red zone touches a game for Rico Dowdle right now, 1.3 per game for Zeke. We haven't seen it yet. And this is something where I was listening to the Swolecast last week. And they have Mr. Tuttle on there, who's one of the guys who does projections for Roto Grinders. They were talking about Audric Estime and how, heading into this previous week, heading into yesterday, a lot of people are going to play Audric Estime. The projections look good. People are going to trust him and want to go to him more. And Tuttle was like, I don't know why the snaps would flip this much. I know that, dude, I do streams here every day. What are we talking about? Am I still alive? What? Get out of here. This is not the day, guys. Yesterday was too much. I just want to do work today. Just anybody's annoying to me, take a fucking time out. So anyway, for what I was saying about this, so Audric Estime last week, Tuttle is somebody who makes projections for Roto Grinders, was like, I would have a hard time projecting Audric Estime where I think the industry is going to project him because of the fact that it's a 1 week sample size. There's some signal there, but the lead back's still there, and the role could just be different from 1 week. That we saw this week that it flips back entirely, where Javonte Williams goes right back to work. So in this kind of situation for me with how Rico Dowdle is going to get projected, I feel like just don't lock him into having this bell cow role. It actually matters because the fact, A, Dallas might not be good. B, Rico Dowdle himself is just, he's been good this year, but it's still an offense that's not good. He himself is not getting great blocking. There's not a ton of opportunity anyway. So I would just not flock to Rico Dowdle. And I think people will hear the coach speak around Dowdle and go, got to jam this guy in. And in reality, it's still a dog shit team with not a high total and a back who's been splitting touches pretty evenly, especially in the red zone. So that's really the main thing I want to say about Dowdle is your number 5 projected guy. Tank Dell, top 6, 11.8 projection. Cooper Rush, 11.5. An AK salary for him. Just playing him might get unique because that projection is not going to come up naturally, but a QB can get there. And people will worry about Trey Lance. Trey Lance coming in last week in cleanup duty, as Jen was saying earlier. So it's possible that you could see a spot where people are worried about Trey Lance coming in. As a result, they play more Cooper Rush. But if Cooper Rush stays afloat in the game, he's going to play all 4 quarters. So try to keep that in mind. Will Cropper get called up with Mingo in? I think Cropper got called up over Dalvin last week. Honestly, I really wouldn't worry about it that much. I'm not sure. It's whoever's active is basically still just a wide receiver 4 on a team that's not very good. So I wouldn't shock me again if Mingo sits. Mingo clearly not ready for prime time. He hasn't been at any point in the last 2 years. So I think they kind of want to let him come along on their roster and feel more comfortable with him. And then, frankly, there could be a shot too that Dallas just never really plays him meaningfully, whether it be this year or next year. I think there's no guarantee on it, but it just comes down to who's active. If Mingo's active, you should probably bump down Cropper, but Cropper himself is not anything special. So I wouldn't really worry. Wouldn't worry too much about it, even though obviously you're going to get some of those guys if they're active, just to kind of give you low-owned players in a lineup build. Besides that here, we got Texans D, $6,200 salary, very high price for them. Got to wonder how much people are going to cram them in. Texans D has been good on the year, giving up a negative 0.08 EPA per dropback, negative 0.08 EPA per pass, negative 0.02 EPA per rush. Soften up in the red zone a little bit versus the pass with a positive 0.2 EPA there, which is a sign of softness, but a negative 0.2 EPA versus run. So they clamp down on the run in the red zone, do not clamp down on the pass. Still a defense that's pretty good, getting pressure 28% of the time, hurrying QBs 10% of the time. Sack rate's a little bit low, 5% sack rate, but still low catchable ball rate. They're deflecting passes at a 10% rate. Texans are a defense that should be able to get something going against Cooper Rush and just a Dallas team that's got not a lot left. So despite the high price tag, despite the fact people are going to play him a lot, I think Texans D is still somebody you're probably going to be interested in. And Cowboys D, I get they're going to come up in a sim. Really have no interest in this one right now. Cowboys, $3,600 price tag. I think the projections will work. It'll look good, but it's still not a play that I have any faith in. Stroud's fucked up enough that I guess you could take the shot. on the Cowboys D, but like if they end up being a play that Sims force you onto a lot, just don't want to be there. Texans have good corners too. Yeah, I mean, they're deflecting again. 10% pass deflection rate be towards the higher end. So they're around the ball. They're limiting catchable ball rates, getting pressure. Again, when your hands are around the ball and you're deflecting passes, interceptions aren't that far away. Who is it? Denzel Ward is one of the guys who's like, yesterday got an INT for the first time. I think got hurt in the play as well. First time this year, but like he's been deflecting a lot of passes, and it means that a pick's going to come. So with the fact that they get good pressure, Cooper Rush isn't good. Cooper Rush, to me, so far looks like one of the worst QBs in football. Best QBs to go against if you're a defense, because he's thrown not a lot of catchable balls. 57% rate would be low. 6.3 air yards per attempt. Under pressure, he's been okay, but besides that, nothing else good that Cooper Rush is doing. Texans D, I think, just a more important play, even though you'll get Cowboys D more naturally. Top values overall, Ryan Flournoy, again, last week didn't get snaps. This week, projected for 0.96 fantasy points. Hard to love him, but the game can get weird because of the fact Dallas just has no dogs left. Brevin Spanford on his spot, 0.6 fantasy points for him at a $200 salary. Probably won't come up as much as Flournoy at the same price tag, but both guys theoretically in play. Luke Schoonmaker, 1.2 fantasy point projection to $600 salary. Still looks like an okay play compared to these guys, but a player that's not the most exciting to get to. Ferguson being ill, though, could be something that opens up a little bit more work for Schoonmaker and Brevin Spanford. Last week, Schoonmaker played 11 snaps. Spanford basically playing for the same opportunity. Spanford had 9 snaps. So neither guy getting a lot of work. Either one can catch a touchdown, so kind of the same play. Mixon, despite the high salary, your number 4 value on the slate. And Hunter Lupke, the guy who gets basically blocking work, third down pass work sometimes. He's projected for 1.8 fantasy points at a 1K salary. A pivot point, I guess, theoretically, a Rico Dowdle, but not really because he doesn't get the ball. So Lupke, a player I tried earlier in the year because he was getting so many snaps, just didn't really add value. I know that adds value more today, but it's a showdown, so you can get there. That's basically it for this. Anybody else to note here? We saw Tank Dell already. I think people are going to be curious about Mechie, just to show that real fast. Mechie, 3.5 fantasy points, 4K salary. So not the high salary in the world. He has done enough work that maybe it's possible you see him get a red zone target. Mechie is one guy who coming in out of Bama thought he looked pretty good in terms of the red zone equity he had. It's part of the reason I liked him, even coming off the lymphoma. And then even last year, like I tried my shots at Mechie before. He obviously didn't produce until this year where now there's nobody left. Having Nico Collinson upsets the equation a lot, but it's possible that Mechie just gets like an end zone target, punches one in at a 4K salary. That could be enough to make a lineup if he adds like maybe 2-3 catches on top of that. So Mechie, not a dead play, even though people might overplay him because of what he did on the box scores recently. Let's go to the showdown ownership next. Of course, all this presented by Stochastic, all these data points from Stochastic, 15% off, link in the description. Of course, this month looking like it's going to be the best affiliate month for Stochastic yet. So thank you guys for checking it out, but make sure to check them out. Check out the Solver too. We head over there. Great products that I try to show you guys here, give you guys a real process and hopefully a look at at least what I do from building my lineups. 74% ownership right now projected for Joe Mixon, including 28% in captain. I still would have a hard time fading any part of this. Playing him in the flex, trying to get creative with it, I think is still an okay move. And frankly, a good move in tournaments because you're trying to get unique. That said, if you were telling me I have a couple of lineups to put into the Millie Maker or whatever tonight, the big tournament on DraftKings, which is not $1 million, I would say that it would still be me trying to figure out how to get unique with Mixon and captain would be one move. My second move would be putting Nico Collins at captain and trying that out with Mixon in the flex. And hope that Mixon gives you like a 1 touchdown game with 100 yards, but not quite enough to unseat a Nico Collins would be the hope. But I think it's really hard for me to imagine Mixon not being the highest scoring player on the slate. He gets such good work, averaging, I think, 25 flat. Yeah, 25 flat intended touches a game, 21.6 are rushes, 3.4 targets a game. In the red zone, again, 5.4 intended red zone touches, 2.1 inside the 10-yard line per game. It's just such great work against the Dallas team that is not good anywhere in the field, gets even worse in the red zone in terms of the marks they give up. Like, there's no way to me that they won't be in position for Mixon to score. I guess if Mixon weren't to score, Kaimi Fairbairn to be a little bit more appealing. Like, they could maybe kick some field goals. Not a team that's going to be aggressive on fourth downs quite as much. So that's your one way to kind of get a bailout. Mixon be the pass game, the kicker, maybe Mixon getting hurt himself, being in third and longs. Maybe see Ogubawale take over some of those plays. There's just some of the faint ways you can get away from Mixon. But like even in games where Mixon's been taken out goal line because there's like a third and long or whatever, and they're kind of in the red zone, you still see Mixon get there later on because they just get into the range enough. So I don't think Mixon's a fade today. That said, just how showdowns work. It's not always about playing the best plays. It's about building the most unique lineups that you have, realistic shots to get to first place. So taking Mixon out of some lineups is an okay move, but I personally would have a hard time doing it. Stroud, 62% ownership for him, 8% in captain. I think he's a little bit under-owned for what an easy spot this should be. One pathway to Joe Mixon not getting there would be like a Stroud captain with Nico, Tank Dell, where Nico and Tank Dell are hitting, let's say, 20 fantasy points, and Stroud's got touchdowns to them. Maybe gets a touchdown to a Dalton Schultz, Mechie, a Mixon receiving touchdown, whatever the case may be. That's sort of how Stroud can get there. 8% captain ownership. People don't like playing QBs on showdown slates, but in this spot, it's like pure runway. And I talked yesterday about liking Detroit a little bit more. I actually talked on yesterday and Friday. I didn't quite make the right stand with it, where I played Jameson Williams and everywhere. Did not get enough Amon-Ra, and that was sort of the stupid part by me. My assumption after last week and how bad of a game it was for Jared Goff was that Detroit in a soft matchup will kind of allow him to go nuts because you need to rebuild that confidence after a 5-interception day. Stroud didn't have quite as bad of a day against Detroit, but still it's been disappointing games. When you have a spot to just get your offense right and kind of beat up on a team to get some momentum going for yourself, I think there's something that teams will do for that. So this kind of spot against Dallas where you can get anything, the assumption is going to be that they just run the shit out of the ball, and they should, because they're a team that's not high passer expectation. They run under expectation on the year, or pass under expectation on the year, and run more. But like, they could pass here just to get Stroud one big game, because he really hasn't had a lot that would make you feel like you have the utter confidence here heading into the playoffs, heading into some tough matches as well. Of course, we know week 17 coming up against Baltimore. So there's a lot coming up down the home stretch here for Houston that they have to do. So Stroud at captain, I think it's a little more live than the ownership is right now at 8%. Nico Collins, 51% ownership overall, 17% of captain. He'll be the key pivot point for a lot of people again against Joe Mixon. I still would be happy to go to Nico here despite this ownership, and the flex as well. I think he can hit there. Price tag's tough, but Nico to me a core play today alongside Joe Mixon. And if not playing Mixon, Nico gets a lot more appealing at captain. Rico Dowdle, okay part in the flex. A lot of game scripts where he doesn't get there. He should be able to get some checkdowns, I suppose, in the spot. But really, to me, Rico Dowdle, I'm just not as bullish on him as everybody else. I know people are excited to get some fractional amount of things right with best ball with him. For me, with Rico Dowdle, though, I think the talent's not incredibly high, and it's not high enough to overcome a matchup where like they're just the worst team. So your hope is getting there through checkdowns, maybe one touchdown getting punched in early before Houston finds their depth and immediately starts boat racing the Cowboys. It's possible, but it's a lot of ownership for Rico at number 4. Cooper Rush at QB, I'd take the shot. 4% in captain. Don't love that quite as much with the projection. You could go there. But 33% in the flex, like an 8K salary, it's pretty easy for a QB to outscore an RB on paper. Cooper Rush hasn't been good, but we do know at one point, at least in a couple years ago, like he was good filling in for Dak. It's not the same Dallas team at all, but I don't think Cooper Rush is like a good play. But I think he's a better play than people are going to give him credit for. And I don't think he's a much worse play than Rico, despite much lower ownership projected right now. CeeDee Lamb, forcing your way to him would be a good one as well. 36% ownership, 9% in captain. Honestly, wouldn't shock me if you were a little bit lower here. CeeDee Lamb, you need Cooper Rush to be able to get in the ball. That's sort of the main risk point. Rush himself, though, is kind of cheap. And if CeeDee Lamb makes a winning lineup at captain, Cooper Rush likely makes the lineup, so you kind of know how to flesh that out and save some money playing an 8K QB. So I like the concept of CeeDee Lamb as a play. Captain ownership's a little bit high. I think he's more appealing in the flex, but both have merits today. I think to me, the flex, though, like ideally for CeeDee Lamb, because I want to have a Houston Texan up top at captain if I can. But if you're not going to go that way, try to get unique. CeeDee Lamb at captain in a game script where they're going to be behind from day one. I think a pretty reasonable captain play at 9% ownership. Kaimi Fairbairn, another fail kind of mechanism for Joe Mixon today would be if Kaimi Fairbairn kicks a lot of field goals. They get stopped on third and whatever, and kicking one for with Fairbairn, nobody sort of the way that could work out. Fairbairn at 2K or 2% ownership at captain, I think feels not that bad. I'm pretty content with Fairbairn 31% of the time. I think that's an okay number for him. Might be a little bit lofty. And again, Mixon is sort of a natural lever against him. It's possible that Mixon just takes the touchdowns away. So I like Fairbairn. The ownership feels a little bit high in the flex. Do you think taking some shots at captain, though, would not be a crazy thing to do at all? Besides that here, we got Tank Dell, 31% ownership, Ferguson, 31%. So everything kind of muted here. Nobody crazy chalk besides Mixon. And Mixon, as we've talked about enough times here, the best chalk in the slate and probably some of the best chalk you're ever going to have in a showdown slate, I would think, in general. Just because of the game script, the matchup itself, all that. Besides that, let's go to the lower-owned guys here. So I'm just looking at something on my phone at the same time. All right. Under 10% owned, we got Kevontae Turpin. Could break it in one play. Well, not a soft matchup. Yeah, for Turpin, you would need a gimmick play. In general, he does get easy button kind of targets because they're gimmicky ones. So possibly get hit in one play. If he were to hit, that would probably be your one Cowboys touchdown in the day. So like it would hurt CeeDee Lamb. It would hurt anybody else. Basically, you'd play on the Cowboys side. So Turpin, a valid play, I think, at 10% ownership, even though not the most exciting, and probably would not play him a captain no matter what. Cade Stover, not the most exciting, catch a touchdown here. Daring Bawale, 5% ownership. I think in a third down, kind of third and long situation, can get there potentially. Not an exciting play either, but low owned enough, decent salary on him. Luke Schoonmaker, we talked about him already. Not a great play, but $200 or $600 salary. Not that bad for a guy getting over 10 snaps of work. Robert Woods, don't want to be there now. Flournoy might not even be active. Hutchinson, kind of dead with Nico being back. The irony would be him catching a touchdown pass today after not catching one while playing the Nico role for a few weeks. But Hutchinson, 2% ownership, 3,400. Probably don't want to go there. Cook didn't get work last week. Hard to expect him to get work this week. Damian Pierce, nothing else down here that appealing. Mingo, if you want to take your shot if he's active. 3,200, not the best price tag for him either. Let's over to the optimizer next. Let's get going here. Again, appreciate you guys watching live, even though I'm just not in the mood for bullshit chats today. Just yesterday was a lot. So like today, let's just do the work. Let's just fucking focus on the thing here and not fucking weirdos. Sort of my hope for the day. Let's build some lineups here in the solver coming up next. You check it out here. Of course, the solver, link in the description as well. Half optimizer, half Sims tool. Great product that a lot of the people who you like over at ETR use religiously. So if you want to go and use the ETR guys version, see the stochastic version, you'll see the ETR version here. Get a little bit of a taste of everything here on Splash Play. 25 lineups. Let's build it out next in the optimizer. But what this is going to allow us to see is basically what the pure projection math is going to drive people to, which is like a key part of things. Sometimes people end up playing players that don't even realize they're playing as much as they are just because the projections align well with the salary. It makes the different lineups work. A guy like yesterday, Keyshawn Butte was one of those players where like player that I was like, I don't think is a good play. Makes a lot of lineups work. As a result, people talk themselves into it more. Ends up not being a good play. That happens a lot projection-wise. So it's something to keep in mind here and why we do this part of the process. Your top projected lineup right now, the optimal one you should play in a cash game if you're playing one at 11:24 a.m. on the East Coast, be Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, CJ Stroud, Jake Ferguson, Kaimi Fairbairn, and Jalen Brooks. So a game script here in this optimal lineup where the run game is dominant. Cowboys do not really get there in the pass game. Cowboys don't really get there in the run game either because the game script gets away from them. So that's where the assumption based on the core set of projections here. Besides that, we're getting 100% Joe Mixon in every lineup. Not a surprise. 100% Nico Collins in every lineup. I'd say a little bit of a surprise that they're not moving away from that at all. 100% CJ Stroud in all the top 25 lineups as well. So you are getting a very clear top three here. They want you to play the core Houston Texans. Unfortunately, these guys are also the best plays in the slate. So it's hard for me to disagree with it. I think the hope would be, if you're going to get unique off of this kind of core set of assumptions, would be take Stroud out and then hope that Nico Collins gets yardage but not touchdowns. I think would be one way to do that. And then honestly, I would take Stroud out and I would immediately try to go to CeeDee Lamb on the other side, I think, and try to get some pass game bring back option here because you're not getting CeeDee Lamb a lot naturally. In fact, in this 25 lineup set, you don't get CeeDee Lamb at all. So CeeDee Lamb's projection, it's too low for the salary, but Stroud looks good, getting good total, all that. Yeah, I think playing CeeDee Lamb is actually going to be a little more contrarian today. People will still play him because he's a name brand. He's the obvious top receiver for Dallas. But with the way salary structure works here, people are going to want to play Mixon. They're going to want to play Nico. They're going to want to play Stroud. You're going to get less CeeDee Lamb as a result, and that probably makes him a little bit more appealing. The overall stack construction, we're getting the most. We're getting 3-3 Cowboys, Texans, even split the most. We're getting 4-2 Texans 44% of the time. So in 96% of these lineups, you're getting at least 3 Texans. So if you were to play, and I'm not saying it's credible, but if you were to play a 4-2 Cowboys lineup today, you're getting more unique because people just won't be playing those naturally. In terms of onslaughts, you're getting 4%, so not a crazy amount of onslaughts. Still safe to go. Texans dominant onslaughts. Pricier to do it the way you should, though, with the kicker and the defense on this slate. The point being, it's all Texans dominant stuff. If for some reason the Cowboys were to win this one, you could do that a little bit differently. We're not on the sim part yet. We'll see that in a moment. None of the optimal, though, because it's just not a good defense. A little bit down here, you get 12% in the top 25 lineups. No sims in the solver right now. Let's get back into this. Thank you for the Nakua push or Narkua. We're narking on him too. Yes, that was one of my stands yesterday. Our guy Ross tailed me on. Glad that worked out. Honestly, got a lot of stuff right. The issue is like I played too much Tillman because I was afraid of getting burned by Tillman, and Tillman was 25% owned, and fucking just an awful combo always. Presume it's like a third to first, so we'll do that. 35%, 10,000 lineups. All right. What we're going to do on Stochastic now is build 10,000 lineups and have those compete 10,000 times. So we'll get a read on what the Sims have. You want the best ROI lineups is what we're going to get right now. So we'll get a read on this, some of the key captains as well. And of course, you can get all the data and tools I'm showing you here. The links in the description. Stochastic at 15% off. It's the best deal they have going right now. Promo code SPLASH, 15% off of all their data and tools packages at Stochastic. All right. Back to this, 35% to first. All right, contest sim, let's go. Let's see what we get here. And guys, if you appreciate this content, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Of course, do these videos every Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. besides Wednesdays, because that's my day-to-day. Sundays, do it at 9 a.m. as well with the Final Takes video, which has gotten more popular than I'm able to handle. But hey, it's a lot of fun doing this content. It's a lot of fun for me doing this every day. So appreciate your support here. Hit the like button, subscribe, and do all of that. Even though some days I just want to do the gambling. Some days I just don't want to do nonsense debates about players who are not relevant to the slate. Today is a day. We got to focus on how much of a good play Joe Mixon is. And also, frankly, how old Joe Mixon looks. Like, here, let me zoom out here. Granted, look, I'm 40 this year. I've talked about that. Joe Mixon, though, looks really old. Like, I know RBs, they're look, old RBs doing it more than ever. But man, I pulled the photo Joe Mixon. I'm like, Jesus, dude. Like, he's lived a hard life. I get it. But like, Joe Mixon needs to drink some more water. I feel like just needs to hydrate more or something. He's like 8 years younger than me. He shouldn't be looking like that. He should be youthful, vibrant. You can afford the best lotions and moisturizers. Come on, dude. Your top ROI lineups right now. Got Nico Collins up top at captain. CJ Stroud, Cowboys D, Jake Ferguson, Rico Dowdle, Texans D. So both defenses making it in here. Cowboys D coming up, the number one ROI lineup for XXX, who keeps asking about Cowboys D. They're coming up, but I would still have a hard time really wanting to play them enthusiastically. Rico Dowdle, CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, John Mechie, Kaimi Fairbairn, Texans D. So Rico Dowdle at captain. I don't even know what the game script would be for that. Dallas gets off to a lead early and then just tries to hide for 4 quarters of football, basically, with Rico kind of bearing that and somehow creating first downs for himself. I hate this build. I would not play it, but it does have a top ROI. Nico Collins at number 3, again at captain. CJ Stroud, Dalton Schultz, Ezekiel Elliott, Joe Mixon, Kaimi Fairbairn. So this is fine. Zeke, people don't want to play Zeke, but again, the red zone work has been the same. You can't trust Dallas to flip that necessarily. So for Zeke at this point, not an exciting play as a bring back, especially in a 5-1 onslaught build favoring the Texans. It could hit, though. I get the logic. Joe Mixon again in captain here. CJ Stroud, Jake Ferguson, Kaimi Fairbairn, Rico Dowdle, Xavier Hutchinson. So using almost all the salary, getting a little bit less owned by not playing Nico Collins, playing Hutchinson instead. I'd have a hard time doing that as well, but I get why you're doing it. Number 5 ROI lineup here is CeeDee Lamb at captain, Brandon Aubrey, Cooper Rush, Cowboys D, Joe Mixon, Kaimi Fairbairn. One thing I will say here, this is the kind of slate where it's possible that Cowboys D is the one in a 5-1 bring back. It's also possible that Brandon Aubrey could be the one in a 5-1 situation here with the Texans onslaught. So you're playing 5 Texans and then 1 Cowboy because you obviously have to play 1 player from the other roster. Because like it's possible that Lamb doesn't beat his projection, like doesn't hit 10 fantasy points. It's possible that Cooper Rush doesn't hit 10 fantasy points. Possible Rico doesn't hit 10 fantasy points. At that kind of level, it's possible that you end up in a situation where the kicker is the highest scoring player on the team, the defense the highest scoring player on the team. Things can be weird here, and seeing Aubrey just reminded me of that. So CeeDee Lamb captain, though, I think an interesting lineup, going to be less owned than it probably should be. Though honestly, CeeDee Lamb the flex, also less owned than it probably should be. Overall ROIs right now, Ryan Flournoy, if he's active at captain. So I got to say, and again, I critiqued the Sims, what was it, on the Thursday Night Football slate, where it's getting a ton of John Bates. It's one of those plays that I know as they update projections throughout the day, the plays get different, things move around. You're not going to get this high of an ROI on Ryan Flournoy. Like, Ryan Flournoy outscoring, I mean, he doesn't have to outscore like Mixon and Stroud and Nico and all those guys, but he would have to score like, let's say 25 captain adjusted fantasy points there, while Mixon and Nico and Stroud and CeeDee Lamb all go off for like 25 points without the captain boost. That's sort of the way that would work. Same thing as Bates was on Thursday Night Football, but in practicality, that doesn't actually work that often. And Flournoy wasn't getting enough work. He should now be behind a bunch of different guys. So like, you don't really want to play Flournoy at captain, but it's important to note what it represents though, which is that there's a lot of good players to play in the flex, a lot of good players who have, 15 to 25 fantasy point range of outcomes. And that's why you're getting Flournoy as captain. So you could cram all those guys in, but Ryan Flournoy captain himself, like not actually a good play. No desire to even watch the game. There you go. I mean, look, I want to see Houston like be a fun offense, so that's why I'd want to watch it. But it is not going to be a competitive game, you would think. Kymie Fairbairn, a captain. This one I could get with more. Like, you have a team that's going to move the ball, I think, fairly easily in Houston side. If that's the case, Fairbairn kicking in field goals for a team that doesn't go for it on fourth down with a ton of aggression, I think is a good move. So a Fairbairn, a captain, I think a valid play here, and I would take him at captain over Flournoy a million times out of a million. Maybe 999 times out of a million. Xavier Hutchinson and cap at the flex, top ROI for him to 2%. Everything else here's a negative ROI at captain and flex. So Flournoy, Fairbairn, and Hutchinson are the ones they like the most. The Hutchinson one I could see just because of the fact that like he's still probably gets some work, and now he's not wide receiver one in terms of the route tree he was running. You got no targets while being wide receiver one and running those routes, but having Nico back in, like it's possible you just get a gimmicky target for Hutchinson that ends up being a touchdown or something. So the Hutchinson one I get more than the Flournoy one, to be honest, looking at those ROIs. Overall exposures, let's look at the flex first. On the flex, you're getting CJ Stroud 54% of the time compared to 53%, so basically flat. Rico Dowdle, stochastic wants you get 47% of the time compared to 34%, so above the field on Rico Dowdle in the flex. Kymie Fairbairn, 46% compared to 30%, so a good amount over on Fairbairn, about 50% more. Joe Mixon, 45% compared to 44% in the flex, so dead even on Mixon. A little bit more for Jake Ferguson, 38 compared to 29. A little bit more for Cooper Rush. Really not a big stand here. What's the biggest stands? Yeah, Fairbairn's the biggest stand here with that 50% more you're getting in the flex. Rico, 15% more almost. Yeah. Aubrey, you're getting a lot more, 10% more. All right, not the hugest stands, though. Fairbairn flipping him a little bit, but no like double the field stands, which we're normally getting in a sim. For captain exposure here, your top exposed captain in the top 150 lineups is Joe Mixon, 35% compared to 29. So even though Mixon going to be the chalk, as I said up top, I think he's the best play in the slate. Sims seem to agree with that by a wide margin. Nico Collins are actually getting less a captain, 14% compared to 17.5. Bit of a surprise to me. Rico Dowdle getting more a captain. I get the logic because if the Cowboys were to pull an upset, Rico Dowdle at captain makes sense for a sim. I just don't think the Cowboys pull the upset that often. And watch them fucking win by 10 today. But like, they're not good. They're not good with Dak. I don't know how they're good now with Cooper Rush, who looks worse than Dak, like every possible metric. So I don't get it. Like I get why Rico Dowdle will come in as a positive play at captain, but like in reality, I don't know. I never want to say throw, take out, but like I just don't think the Cowboys have a shot to win this one. Like there aren't a lot of games where I feel like the team has no shot to win, and we've seen upsets happen. You know, NFL, NBA, huge ones. They've happened this year across both sports. I just don't think Cowboys can literally win this game. Like, I don't know what it would take to happen. It would take Houston like not showing up. It would take like the Homer Simpson beating Dredrick Tatum congenital heart defect kind of thing, I think, for Dallas to win this game. And it'd have to be multiple guys on Houston having a congenital heart defect today. And I don't think it's going to happen. So Rico Dowdle at captain, don't actually like it as a play. The Texans even trying this game. I can see. I mean, they should. Good teams still try. Like good teams. Detroit try yesterday versus Jacksonville. Yeah, they'll try and they'll beat them up if they want to. It just kind of depends on what your motivation is. And I think for Houston, coming off of a tough loss versus Detroit last week, I think the motivation is there to try to get it right. So, yeah, that's sort of how I feel about it. I think they'll try. I think they'll try, and I think they're going to try to pass more than they would normally, would be my guess. And frankly, Tank Dell at captain, I think one play we're not seeing at all. Love Nico, but Tank Dell being out there should be opened up a little bit more by Nico and the pressure he takes away outside. So Tank Dell, Sims don't want him. 3% of cap compared to 6%. Just targeting one outlier play here from Houston that's not Mixon or Nico is a profitable approach if Houston does try like I'd expect them to. Let's look at the top lineups for some other captains here, including Tank Dell. I think is an important one to look at. Then we'll try to handle the moment as well. Tank, for what it's worth, look, I don't think the most impressive on the year. 0.06 EPA per target for a guy like him is really not that good. 6 targets a game, not that good. He was certainly a little bit better when Nico was out, but that's the crush of volume, not really his own efficiency. But that said, it's the Cowboys. Anybody can score versus the Cowboys, if we said enough times here. So Tank Dell captain, I think, viable here. We're getting Tank, CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, Kymie Fairbairn, Rico Dowdle, Ryan Flournoy. Just not as big on Flournoy, but again, we know why he's coming in. Tank Dell, CJ Stroud, Cooper Rush, Jake Ferguson, Joe Mixon, Kavontae Turpin. It's okay. Tank Dell, Stroud, Mixon, Kymie Fairbairn, Schoonmaker, Rico Dowdle. The issue I have is like, I think Tank can hit a captain without Stroud making it. And in fact, I think it's possible you could have Tank hit a captain, Nico in the flex, and Mixon with that. and we're not getting those builds up top here. But it is saying basically that if Tank Dell hits a captain, Stroud has to come with him. I would disagree a little bit, but that's sort of sim logic for you. Dalton Schultz captain is a really tough one to expect happening. He's like the poorer man's version of Tank Dell, where he's gotten a little more volume lately because everybody was out. But now that we have multiple tiers above him with Nico coming back in, Mechie looking better, Tank Dell, of course, looking better too. Schultz is really hard for me to trust at this point, but he could just score the touchdowns. Schultz at captain with Stroud, Ferguson, Mixon, Tank Dell, Texans D. Schultz, Stroud, Cowboys, Mixon, Nico Collins, Texans D. Schultz with Stroud, Cade Stover, CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. I probably like this one the most. I don't want to fade Mixon, though. I mean, this one's a logical one. Like, talk about a 5-1 build where you have the defense, the opposing defenses to bring back because nobody scores points. I think that could work here. This build, I think, probably has more like 10 to 20 dupes, with it saying 1. Stochastics dupes numbers tend to be a little bit low in terms of the representation because they just have a smaller pool of lines that are actually going to be played. But I think for Schultz, a captain, I like this build a good amount. Maybe leave a little more salary on the table with one more swap. I'm not sure what that would be. Schultz lineups, though. Don't love the concept of Schultz a captain. Lineups are kind of fun. Other captains we could look at. I really don't think Mechie can make it. Let's see what we have for Mechie. Slightly positive ROIs from Mechie captains with John Mechie, CJ Stroud, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Brooks, Joe Mixon, Nico Collins. You're getting everybody good in here if you play Mechie at captain. It's the one thing I'll say for it. Hard to imagine him scoring enough to get there, but this is like a better version of what we talked about with the Ryan Flournoy thing, where Ryan Flournoy has a higher ROI at captain because he allows you to get these unique combos with all the star players in. Mechie at captain allows you to do that too, because you're still getting Lamb, you're still getting Mixon, still getting Nico, still getting Stroud. You're getting everything in here. So that's the logic of playing a Mechie captain, which is kind of appealing, I guess. Mechie, Brandon Aubrey, CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, Rico Dowdle, Tank Dell. I like that one less, but nicely balanced, if nothing else. Mechie, CJ Stroud, CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Rush, Rico Dowdle, Texans D. The Mechie builds, I think, have a little more merit than I would have thought. I'll say that. Fairbairn lineups. These ones have really high ROIs. Kaimi Fairbairn, Brandon Aubrey. So kicker duel here. CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, Joe Mixon, Rico Dowdle. Fairbairn to captain with Stroud, Ferguson, Mixon, Rico Dowdle, Texans. Fairbairn with CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Rush, Jake Ferguson, Joe Mixon, Texans. Yeah, I don't want Nico to come out of these, but it seems like Nico not pairing well with Fairbairn and captain for some reason. This one, Fairbairn, Schultz, Mixon, Nico, Rico Dowdle, Texans. It's okay. I would have thought I would have liked the Fairbairn lamps a little bit more, to be honest. Still thinking about Texas D being more expensive than Ferguson kickers. Yeah, I mean, honestly, let's look at Texans D at captain and see if it gets a play. Chad has been less autistic. It was starting hot, but I threw some mute. So yes, we're doing better today, but it's always a journey here on the channel. I appreciate the chat a bunch. Some days, some days it's like a little too much. Texans D, not today. It's been leisurely. I appreciate the chat. Just let me do the work today. The Texans at captain, CeeDee Lamb, Cowboys D, Ferguson, Mixon, Rico Dowdle. No, thank you on that. This doesn't even make sense, the lineup, really. Texans D, Stroud, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, Kaimi Fairbairn, Rico Dowdle. It's okay. You have CeeDee Lamb and Dowdle putting up some production here. Defense kind of carries the water for it. I think you'd want to pair Mixon, but this one's got a dupe. 2 dupes on this one. It probably means it's got like 15, 20 dupes. Texans, Stroud, Cowboys D, Ferguson, Joe Mixon, Nico Collins. Yeah, Texans D captain's not the most exciting. It's a lot of money to spend up for those guys. The one guy coming in and saying he thought I was dead, I think, would count as autism more. But yes, but your lad in that was Sue. There was the 2 key starts there. Thoughts of the backup Houston RBs? No, don't do that. Ogunbowale, because you're playing Cowboys getting sacks and stuff, I think is okay. Would not play the rest of it. No, that's usually not a good move. Like Dameon Pierce does occasionally break a long touchdown. I don't think you're building plus EV lineups if you include Dameon Pierce. Like building the blowout stuff works so infrequently. You're better off trying to play low owned guy X, low owned guy Y than trying to do backup RB and capture an outcome where there's enough scoring, but so much scoring that like the team goes out. Because there has to be like enough scoring that Mixon's out there for 3 quarters, 4 quarters, and 3 quarters and change. Then the other guy comes in, maybe takes a touchdown away from him in between. It's a really minute outcome. You want to play Pierce. I get it. I think Ogunbowale a more appealing play, but I personally wouldn't. More casuals on a Sunday morning. That's true. The DGens are somewhat better behaved because they know what we're trying to accomplish here, I guess. As opposed to the casuals who just wanted me to tell them lineups, who are the best plays, and also do sites that I never play on. That's what yesterday was. I think we've covered everything well enough here. Let's go to a hand build. I still think no matter what, to me, it's Mixon a captain. Like, Mixon has one of the best roles in football right now, best roles in RB, but like legit best roles in football. Can it fail today? Yes, but for a sim lineup, I'm just going to see what we can do with like the best foot forward. Mixon a captain is going to be my start here for the hand build that we'll simulate out in a moment here. Let me update this before I click the button too hastily. All right, so Mixon a captain. Again, I like Nico with it. I think Nico gets yardage today, even if he doesn't get touchdowns. Cowboys just can't defend anything downfield. Downfield a 0.3 EPA per target, 31% or 31 yards per attempt, and intended yards per attempt, 13 yards per pass. So maybe not giving up deep passes over and over again, but giving up enough here. You can move away from Nico and go to Tank Dell, but Nico being back in here, Stroud is being excited to find him downfield, and him running open are all things I kind of expect today. So I'm going to stick with him right now. CeeDee Lamb is a bring back. I think is the way it goes. And then people are going to play CeeDee Lamb enough in the flex today. It's a lot of salary to use up on him. I mean, Ferguson, I think, would give us a lot more room to maneuver. And Ferguson's targets still 7.3 a game, 3.1 less than CeeDee Lamb. Still feel like Lamb's a better play. Let's see what we can do with Lamb first. So Lamb in, 4,100 left per player. I mean, at this point, I would like to play defense and kicker still. See what happens if we do that. Texans D. Kaimi Fairbairn as well. Leaves us $700 left. So now we have to target a bullshit touchdown for somebody. Tegan Quitoriano. Can he catch a bullshit touchdown? How many snaps is he playing? He is playing 17 a game. That's not awful for comparison. Cade Stover playing 29. Dalton Schultz playing 48 last week. All right, let's see what happens here. The thing is now we're at kind of a build where Stroud would be more likely to make this lineup if I'm assuming a Quitoriano touchdown gets him there. Okay, that's a funny one, but fuck off. No, I do not want to play Brad McFlunky. Fucking Brad McFlunky. He seems like a Brad. Minus 41% ROI on this. All right. And we didn't leave a lot of salary on the table. We played a guy that has barely a projection. I get the logic why it didn't work out. Maybe a Cowboys tight end touchdown. Who's got more red zone targets on the year? Spanford has none. Schumacher has a couple. Let's try Schumacher here. Leaving $100 on the table. A 5-1 build with Mixon at captain, Nico Collins, CeeDee Lamb, Texans D, Kaimi Fairbairn, and Luke Schumacher. Negative 16% ROI. I don't think it's going to like you playing the defense and Fairbairn. I really just want to figure out ways to uniquely play a ass whipping for Houston, but one that I guess still includes Mixon really is the important part to me. Let's take out Nico. I mean, all right, Stroud throws some touchdowns. If he throws touchdowns, Joe Mixon is a little bit less likely to make it a captain. So let's go Tank Dell getting one touchdown and some yardage instead. So we'll save some money from Nico Collins by going to Tank. Then can we do Texans and Fairbairn and not get yelled at? Leaving 1,100 on the table with this. To be clear, I'm not going to push this until we get a positive ROI, but I would like to see if there's a way to make it a little more positive. And I get, Nico Collins, I want to play. I'm excited to play him coming off the injury. That said, like for a showdown slate, just playing Tank Dell, like he and Nico Collins are the same play, probably more of a worthwhile approach. Did my first lineup of the show this morning, thought about Trey Lance for 20 seconds and realized it was suboptimal. Yeah, you can't play Trey Lance. Unfortunately, you can't just because you don't know if he's going to get work. And I get the logic of trying to play him, but honestly, he'll probably be overplayed for what even his chance of coming in and filling in for Cooper Rush is. I guess the builds that I'm playing do kind of assume that Cooper Rush is failing, but Yeah. Honestly, if you threw a touchdown to Lamb, touchdown to Schumacher, Cooper Rush probably stays in the whole game in that kind of situation. All right. I don't think playing Texas D is going to be plus EV. Like, no matter what you try to do. Fairbairn making it, I still like no matter what. Let's leave the Texans D out of this build. I want to see if I can just get this somewhere closer to where I want it to be. Maybe Dameon Pierce. Maybe we'll take what people want and play the backup here. And that leaves us 5,500 left. Or you could go to Brandon Aubrey kicking some field goals as well. You know, Aubrey's got unlimited range. Only $300 on the table. Probably not enough to be unique enough, if I had to guess. If the backs were cheaper, yeah. But backup QBs are always a little bit higher priced. Yeah, negative 32% on this. I'm not sure what the pathway is in a hand build, but I will say no matter what, I will still be playing Captain Joe Mixon today and trying to figure out ways to cram in Houston dominant builds with CeeDee Lamb as a bring back. So a little bit tough to figure out how to get there right now. But that's it for now, guys. We've done 45 minutes. Your 3 takeaways to get unique are coming up. First, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Of course, your engagements go a long way for me. A sole proprietor is here to show you my gambling and give you some good info along the way. That's a promise here. Show you the best tools along with Stochastic and the Solver. So please show some love here. Hit the like button and subscribe. Of course, Underdog, $1,000 bonus cash. Stochastic, 15% off. Link in the description for that. If you want $30 off unabated in their betting tools, I'll be doing them later today on the NBA Splash Play NBA channel. Coming up at 4 p.m. So check that out there. But unabated, $30 off the promo code Splash and Solver. Link in the description. And of course, the paying members join down below for $4.99. All right, the takeaways build unique lineups. Number 1 would be fading the entirety of the top 3 or fading one of the top 3 of CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, Joe Mixon. They come up naturally projection-wise in every lineup. They also, in terms of just the game theory of it all, are going to look like the best plays. If you open up the DK app, you're going to see a soft Cowboys defense. People will want to go attack the DVP matchup as well, even though it's not something you should be worried about. It still is something that makes people play players on these kind of casual slates like Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, and the main slate. So with that in mind, Nico going to be played a lot. Stroud going to be played a lot. Mixon going to be played a lot. They're the best plays in the slate, though, so it's up to you to figure it out. If you play those 3 guys, do some weird shit. Leave a lot of money on the table. Play a lesser-owned Cowboy. Go 5-1 onslaught builds for the Texans. But if you have to really keep in mind, like the number 1 thing to keep in mind in the slate is that playing Nico, playing Mixon, playing Stroud, playing any of those guys, like those guys are all going to be in every lineup. So just kind of keep that in mind. Not literally in every lineup, but like they're going to be in functionally every lineup. Number 2, way to get unique on this one. I still think it's playing Texans D. That's a really tough price tag, but they get pressure. Cooper Rush has been okay under pressure, not taking a ton of sacks. He might be able to get the ball out fast, but like he's not good. He's inaccurate. The Texans deflect passes at a high clip. I think they get a takeaway here. If the takeaway turns into a pick 6, you still probably need them at 6,200. So I think Texans D is still live. They didn't come up a lot naturally. I think they're a better play. And people are also going to be playing Cowboys D because they're cheap. And I don't think Cowboys D gets anything going unless Stroud fucks up catastrophically, which admittedly Stroud has done enough times that I get kind of the logic. But I would just pay up and do Texans D if you can. Number 3 way to get unique here. I mean, look, the 3rd way to get unique, which is Sims approved, would be playing more Rico Dowdle, playing a captain, trying to play a game script where Dallas controls the game, but Houston kind of is playing from behind. I think that's a reasonable way to approach things on most slates. I have a really hard time believing Dallas is competitive today. I have a hard time believing they could even pull a lead. If they have a lead, it's like they get one done early where CeeDee Lamb catches some passes, maybe a fluke play to a Turpin or Brooks or whomever, and then Dowdle punches one in. If they have a lead, like to me, that's the kind of lead they have. I just don't think they have sustained one. I find it hard to believe they could be competitive. Dallas itself is not going to be a home field advantage in this spot very much, if it even would be right now against the non-Texas team. So I don't know. I mean, just because Cowboys aren't bad or aren't good right now, and like frankly, their fans like in games against like the Eagles have barely been paying attention in the last few weeks. So basically, to me, I just think this is a spot where the Texans dominate. So find ways to get unique playing the Texans. I think is sort of the goal. Play your Tank Dells, play your Mechis, play things that aren't Nico. Try to target the pass game that way. That's sort of how I try to do it today. But there we go, guys. Yeah, it doesn't seem to like Tank. I'll give you that. The projections don't like Tank. Sims don't like Tank, which makes Tank, I think, a very live tournament play. That's it for this one, guys. Again, thank you to the paying members here. Forgot to add our dude yesterday who joined. I think it was David. But appreciate everybody who's a paying member here. Of course, the $4.99. You get yourself a VIP Discord. You get yourself a data sheet every week. You get a premium stream from me going game by game, talking about the advanced analytics matchups as well. And that's what you get here. So make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and that join button as well before you go. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod. Of course, gamble responsibly, even as always money time. I'll be back at 4 p.m. on the Splash Play NBA channel. Still an NBA slate, 6 games today on DraftKings. Be hitting that one. Deeper dive as well on Stochastic today at 5 p.m. for the NBA. So lots of NBA content coming out for me. Check it out. We're so close to the first 200 subs in the Splash Play NBA channel. So go check that out at Splash Play NBA. I'll be back with you guys tomorrow for more. So fucking not going to be a fun basketball video tomorrow either, because whenever Jamar Chase and the Bengals go off, I suffer. But we'll see how that looks tomorrow. I'll see you guys then. Enjoy your days. And of course, good luck. Bye-bye.